Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for connecting today to the streaming. I'm gonna notify the channel. Okay, so where are your questions, guys? What are you doing with 6 and 7? Importantly, can you see me? Can you hear me? Please confirm, because I don't have any other way to get some feedback from you. Okay, so hi, Frag Aragon. How are you? Okay, so let's see how are you? Good, good. Hi, Pere. Hey, Oya. So nice to have you here. So, well, seems that I am assuming that if you are here, it means that in a way you have already passed your first 5 projects, which is that you're essentially more than halfway done. So that's a good thing. Now, tell me, how can I help you? Tell me which blockers you have. Is anything that you need a bit of help with? Something that is making you feel a bit confused, or it doesn't connect the points in your head? Okay, come on, let's go for that. Fragger seems to have a question. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, of course. So you are confused with the async task. Okay, that's a bit generic, right? Okay, so Pagagon is typing. The rest of you in the channel, you can drop your questions. You don't need to wait until I finish this one. I will go to next automatically. Okay, so well, Farron seems to have a problem with the implementation. The recycle view is not populating. So he's still typing. So I think I'm going to maybe share my screen so you can see a bit on Slack what I see. So, okay, so this is what we have now. Well, definitely, if the doing background returns null, that's not a good thing. Okay, so we can have a look at it. We probably will need to see the code, at least a snippet of code. So let me share something with you now that we are here on the live stream. So let me share my Android Studio, and this is before. Okay, let's create a new project. This is really not relevant for what I want to show you, but Let's create a new project to say just test next. Anything will work. Okay, so let's see. In the meantime, yes, that's easy. Okay, so Faragon, sorry, it's a bit difficult to pronounce. In the meantime, while I do this, okay, I have something here. Okay. Well, yeah, I guess that I will have to check this method. Do you have your code on GitHub? Because that will definitely help. Um, can you please tell me? So okay, so this I'm gonna share with you is, let's go here. So this is the API, the network call that you have to do. You need to do. So this is I'm doing with the test key, and this returns this JSON. As you see, JSON is essentially a string, a long string that has certain structure, of course. So if you go to you copy this, okay, and you can do search for JSON viewer, okay. You have different options. I like I usually take the first one. It's nice enough. So you paste here the JSON, you can view like here, like in a tree, like nicer. Okay, so you can see the things that it has. Okay, so essentially there are, we say, two very different parts of the project. One is the one where you do the network request, and the other one is where you use the data that comes from the network request, right? So coming back to Android Studio, let's see, what is this? Okay, so obviously this is an oversimplification, okay? It is not like real, but it's trying to explain, give you some guidance, okay? So there are two things that you have to do, and then one is to make the network call. And you handle the data, right? So use the data that comes from the API. So something that you're going to have is more or less in some place. I don't say it's in this place, okay? But somewhere you're going to have a method that is going to make the network call, okay? So let's say oh, and this is going to return a string. It's not exactly like this. As I said, this is an oversimplification, okay? And then here you do whatever. Call. You will end up after like this, for example. A few things here and there with that. So you have the asymptotes and you do the building background. So at some point, in certain moment, this is gonna return the result. Okay, and result is a string. Okay. 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 So then you're gonna use this result in this second step. Okay, something that you can do is like obviously this is not real programming, of course, but let me show you this. So something you can do is, where's my, sorry for the confusion. So this is the JSON that we have. This is an example JSON, of course. So we can copy this. Something that you can do is in Angular Studio, somewhere, whatever it is, that this result is used. So you can probably do like string JSON equals okay. So that it will be more like the real similar in a sense. Okay, you get the idea. So this is conceptual. Okay, more or less like this. Okay. The some simplification that you can do is, instead of doing that, instead you can start by doing this. I'm gonna comment this out. You can do string JSON equals, and you say, you put the quotes, you put the cursor between the quotes, and then you paste the JSON. Okay. So the idea here is that we can pretend that this is the response. Okay. So you can do above before you need to end up implementing the HTTP calls. That's for sure, 100% guaranteed. Okay. So the idea that I want to share with this is that doing the HTTP call is, I would say, not the fanciest thing. It's not like a lot of fun. Okay. So if you want to start doing the network call and then go doing the rest of the project, that's an option. But if you do this that I'm suggesting, then you can do the nicest part of the project, that is that you can play with the data and show it on the screen and make the app work. And then after that, remove this fake JSON and put the network code, which is a different approach. So what I'm trying to say is that you can do the second step without doing the first if you do this trick. Because the second step, from my own personal perspective, is like nice. It's like you are playing with the app and you have your app running and you can scroll and click and it's fine. That said, obviously we need to clarify the point with the network call, but just going for that in a second. Okay, so so we have. Okay, so yeah, what I suggest, Fragaron, is you can do that what I suggest. And in the meantime, I'm going to have a look at your repository and try to find out where the problem is. Okay? So please let me know if you are happy with that, and hopefully we have some more questions. So I'm going to clone your repository. I need to know. Okay, awesome. So at least you can progress on some things in the meantime. I can also let me show you something else. I'm going to show you. I think it's something. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So before I start explaining this, so by this time I'm assuming that you know what the model is. So the model is the structure of your data. Okay. So you're receiving a data in the JSON, and you need to parse it to some Java objects. And those Java objects have some different fields and different structures. So it can be like, for example, you have an object of type, and let's say, let me check the API, just to be more precise. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen while I explain this. Okay, so that's okay. Okay, so this is the JSON, like in a tree, like nicer than a plain string. So we have a certain data here, and that would be like, for example, an object. So we can have an object of type result, and that object will have a string called ID, and it will have a string called type, and so on. Okay, this is a Boolean, which will be false. And then, so we will have those things as member variables. Then we will have a constructor, obviously, or more than one means. And finally, we will have the getters and setters, okay? Because all these variables, the member variables or fields, will be private. So it means that you need to write that object, okay? And not only that object, but that object will be a list of these result objects, and each of them, or that list, will be included in another object which is called response, and has all these other fields. Again, it has its constructor, and again, it has its getters and setters. Okay, so it means that you need to write those classes. This is not particularly complex JSON, but still you will need to write those classes. Maybe for the purpose of the app, you don't need all the data that comes here, so you don't need, you can skip some of them. That's perfectly fine. You can do it. But I'm going to show you how to create those classes automatically. Okay. So the way you do is you copy the JSON. Okay. Then you come here and you say JSON to JSON schema to project. Okay. You come to this website. So I'm gonna copy this here. Okay, so here I have copied the JSON. Let me share this resource with you in Slack. Sorry, it's a bit confusing sometimes. Where's my Slack? Yeah. And it's over. Okay. Now, so I have pasted here the JSON. Here you can decide the package name, the class name. Well, this is optional, but probably you want to do like the same package that we have. This is a JSON. This is JSON. Here we can annotate with different things. This is maybe a bit more advanced. So at the moment we are going to say none. And here we have like a lot of options. So like let's use primitive types initially. Long integers we can use. Include the constructor. We can include the hash code equals if we want. It's not necessary. There's override to string as well. We can do all these fancy things. We can even make the classes parcelable automatically, which we are not going to need it, I think. But yeah, we're not going to need it for this project. But anyway, I'm going to do it just so you can see how it works. Okay. So if I click on this, this is going to generate this code. So in this code, you see I have this common example package because it's the one that I have included in the form. But you may want to come to your project, take the package name of your project, whatever it is, all this, right? Then maybe create a model folder, and inside that you will add this. So as you can see here, I have, let's go into maybe for, well, the class is called example because we have called it that way in the form, but you can tweak that, that's okay. So what else? So let's go for the response. That is the one that is more interesting. So you see here in the implements parcelable automatically. So we have the status, the total, the start index, the pages, all this data that we initially have here. Okay, so all those are fields, and then we have a parcel implementation thing, more parcel implementation. There's the constructor. This is like the empty constructor, and this is the constructor with all the parameters or fields, and then the getters, the setters for each of them, right? So with that, you can copy to the clipboard, or you can download as a zip. Then you unzip that, take it to Android Studio, and paste it in your model, like something like this, for example. As well, this is a project by Hackathon, but you can do that. So this way, you don't need to write all that code. It's going to be generated automatically for you. And this is particularly helpful when you have like a big model, because you can have, I had one in one of my jobs that it was super, super big. And writing all that code, so thinking to write all these model classes with all the fields for each of them, with all the getters, the setters. Some of the things are more quite automatic, but this still is going to be time consuming just for nothing, making them parcelable and everything. And you can do just in super quickly in one go. So I'll stop the sharing. I hope that it helped you or it was interesting. Any questions? Okay, so hopefully there's someone else here. So I'm going to look now at your code and see if I can build this. Yeah, there seems to be some problem. Okay, I need to fix this. It's interesting. so don't we have any more questions? This is super quiet. Okay, so I managed to get the app to build the app. Going to start it on the emulator. We'll see if we can figure out what the problem is. So as it is not busy, there are not questions. I don't see the point of seeing my face when I do this. So I'm gonna stop the streaming while I look at this, and I will keep an eye on the Slack. Okay, so I will come back to you shortly. Okay, so I've been looking at program code, and I found the issue. Actually, the issue was not in the network code. The network code was fine. It was okay. Um, the problem was in the adapter. So I want to make sure. So on this program. uh, So share my screen now. Okay. So let's see if we have some feedback before I explain this. So yeah, the error was a silly mistake. Yes, minor thing. And as I said, let's see if Freveron is here because I would prefer to explain it when I know that he is listening. Yeah, okay, seems it's typing. Okay, so I know that there are a few of you listening. So I'm going to do show what I done. Yeah. So Fragrances, well, you see the screen actually, so so you know what he's saying. Okay, let's go for that. Let's go to Under the Studio. So this is the app. The app is working. I mean, it requires a fix, of course, but your network code is okay, right? I'm not gonna say it's perfect because I have not checked all the details and if this is in the right place or everything, but essentially it's okay. Okay, so let me show you how to debug. Okay, so I started by coming to the main activity, trying to find out. Okay, so what is this class, the async task. So then I see this code. Okay, there's nothing like obvious. So these points here are the breakpoints. Okay, so if I do click here, it means that when I'm in debug mode, the code is going to stop there. It's like it's going to freeze on time. And I'm going to be able to analyze what's going on at that time. Okay? So what I can see, so there are two ways to debug or you need to attach the debugger. And there are two ways to attach the debugger. One way is when you have the app running, you come to this button here and you attach uh, here, say click OK. That is good when you want to debug something not straight after starting the application. In this case, we cannot do that because as soon as the application runs, this code is going to be executed. So there's no way for me to come later to attach it. So I need to have it attached initially. So instead of clicking on the play button, so I'm going to click on this other one. So this one is going to attach the debugger straight away before we run the app. So I can even, in the very first point of the application, I can attach or put a break. So that's going to run the application. So, okay, so as you can see, this has a stop here, this has a skip because it has not come in the catch block. So this says here that this object, that is what this your parsing is doing, has size of 10. Okay, so here down we have the object, and as I said, it's kind of we are freezing the time, and we are able to see what's going on at that particular point. So as you can see, you have the 10 elements, and you have them populated here as suspected. So that means that your HTTP call is okay, and there should be something later that is making that fail. So what's going on actually is so I have this button here. It's gonna play the app again until it finds another breakpoint, or in case it finds it, of course. So in the on process secured, you call this clear method, and then you don't need to. This probably you can save that. You can just call this method, because if there's no data here, you're gonna clear the data that you have, and then you are not gonna add new data. So I will say this line of here is completely unnecessary, and it's actually a problem. It's harmful, because you are assuming what you're doing is I clear the data and then I put the new one, but you are clearing the data without knowing if you have new one. So you might end up messing up. So the problem is in this method. If we click again play, so the problem is here. The news arrives with a size of 10. Then you clear the object that you have here and add the new one and notify data change. So then why is not showing? So the problem is that this news that you are clearing is this object, not this one. So essentially you have confused here. So this should be news list, which is the one that the adapter is using to populate the views, is the one that you need to clear. And also is news list the one that you need to populate, and you need to populate with the parameter that you are receiving in the code. And if you do this and you play the app again, then you have the data. So essentially you were receiving the list and you were clearing that list instead of clearing the other one. And you were, well, there was a bit of confusion between the two objects, the one that you need to use and the one where the data comes from. So it was that simple. So it seems that you are in the good, I would say, you're doing well. Something that is important is, according to the rubric, you need to use a loader, and you are using a simple async task. So I'm afraid that whatever we found the error, you're going to be able to reuse all the parsing and the network code. So there's a lot of things there that you can reuse, but you need to modify your implementation because you need to use a loader. So please tell me if that's clear, and tell me if you need me to explain why this is like this. From this, I believe that there was someone else explaining. So everything clear? Please, I need that you give me some feedback, because I might be speaking alone here. So I'm assuming that you are listening, but the only way that I have to know that you have understood or you need any more explanation is if you drop me a line in Slack. So Jason was there as well, so I hope that he also enjoyed the explanation. So Ferron is typing now. Yeah. Okay. So, well, Fagar1, sorry. This is not a difficult name. Is this your name or is it a nickname? Sorry, I'm very curious. It sounds a bit like Lord of the Rings. So, Fagar1 was saying he didn't know how to start debugging. So he was a bit suspicious about that, but he didn't have a clue on how to do it. So, well, now you know, and this is a tool that is you're gonna find super useful every time. That Francisco, okay, so I see. Okay, now I can get the pieces on your fine. So you're Spanish, okay, good, Francisco. So you need to use a loader, and I need to ask you if you are clear with that, because you are not using a loader, you're using an async task. And Do you need an explanation on that? Yeah, the implementation is not good because you're using an async task, and the thing is that according to the rubric, you need to use a loader. So let me copy this point in the rubric. Okay, so I copy this here. So this is what the rubric says. Networking operations are done using a loader rather than an async task. And you are using an async task, which means that you won't pass the project. Now, my question is, you need an explanation. Okay, I'm going to explain how you implement the loader before you try. Okay, because that's important. Now, the thing is, you need an explanation on why you need a loader and why it's not good using an async task. Because I can explain that. That's perfectly fine. But if there's anyone here, anyone listening, wants an explanation on this? Typing here. So someone else is. Oh yes, typing. Okay. So it seems that Flagaron is okay with that. There are a few people asking. We're typing at the moment. Mhm. Okay, so yeah, yeah. I know this is explained in the course, but I thought well, maybe some of you want to. I mean, I can go through that more like briefly and go review that point. Okay, so essentially, okay, let's see what you type in. So it seems that Oya is asking. Okay, so the problem essentially with the async task is not something that you should use. Async task is something that comes from the old days. Still, we explain it because, well, it seems like a good starting point to learn a few things and get some understanding on a few things. So then after the async task, there was like some improvement on that. That is the loader. Okay. Then in the future, what you will use will not be an async task, and it will not be a loader either. To be honest, I mean you will have some libraries that you will use. But as you know, at this stage, we don't want that you use libraries on something that is a core, essential part of the project, because that's not good for your learning and it's not beneficial for you. So you will, for all these network requests, now you are using as well, you're writing the code for the network request itself, like all the HTTP requests, and you're passing the JSON automatically and everything. So you won't do that in the future. The usual way to do things is, well, you use retrofit, which is like the super more common library that everyone uses, that you will end up using retrofit 100% sure. And well, retrofit handles all these background things for you, and that's quite good. It's very powerful. It has a bit of learning curve, but let's say for the basic network call like the one that you're doing, it's perfectly fine. Then you can add more things because HTTP request can be more complex. You can have like parameters and post and get, and you can have headers in the, well, it's like a bunch of things, okay, and you can configure all that. You will end up using that solution. And also, for the parsing of the JSON, you can get some of the libraries that you can put on top of retrofit, like JSON, Moshi, and some others. But some others are also for XML, but you usually would want to have a JSON. That's the idea. But there are libraries that support XML as well. So those libraries, you can annotate your model, and essentially you won't even have to write the parsing. So you just tell retrofit to configure stuff, and everything is done for you magically somehow, which is good. But obviously, if you learn that straight away, then it's like, well, you see all that magic happening, but you don't even know how it works and how things are under the hood. So coming back to the question was why use a loader instead of an asyntax? Why a loader is a more advanced, like I would say, like an improved version of that. Okay? So what happens is that the network call obviously can take time. Sometimes it can be very quick, but let's say that the network call takes 20 or 30 seconds. That's perfectly possible. That happens many times. You may have not a good connection, or I don't know, whatever. Okay, so let's start by that. So you have your code, and then you are making the call in wherever you are making the call. Doesn't matter. But in this case, you have the non-create, populate the adapter. So you start the network call. You hit the endpoint, and you are waiting for that to come. Okay. The usual thing is that it comes back and everything processes properly. So you do what you do in background. Then you do your own post execute. You have the result. You pass that to whatever you have to do in the activity, which in this case is passing that to the adapter and substitute, modifying that change. That's fine. Okay, so now let's consider another scenario. Okay, there's a scenario where you make a network call, and that network call takes like 20, 30 seconds. It says long enough that you rotate the device. So by now you know that when you rotate the device, there's a life cycle, and that means that the activity needs to be recreated. So that activity is destroyed, then a new activity is created. First thing that is going to happen is that in the on-create of the new activity, you're going to make the network call again. Okay? But the first network call that was taking 20, 30 seconds is still going on. Then that network call, the first one, returns a result, and in the on-post execute, gives that result to the activity. But the activity has been destroyed. The activity is not there anymore. So the async task cannot, the first async task that you created in the first activity and did the first network call cannot pass the result to the second activity because it doesn't have knowledge about that second activity. It's going to try to pass it to the first activity. So the first problem is that, as I said, that activity is not there, so that can never happen. Okay, that can also cause a memory leak. We can speak about memory leaks if you want as well, but I'm going to keep that aside, and then you tell me what. Okay. So with that in mind, you have now a second network call going on. And that second network call is going to take 20, 30 seconds. And in the meantime, you rotate the device again. What happens? So the activity is destroyed, a third activity is created, and a third async task, and a third network call, and you still don't have your data in the activity. That's a problem. That's a problem for many reasons. Apart from the fact that you are creating memory leaks, that can be temporal, but okay, fair enough. It's still not good. Apart from that, the problem is that you are consuming battery and consuming data because you are making the same thing over and over without a reason, and that's terrible. That's not good. Okay, so that said, the loader is the improvement to avoid this problem. So essentially, the loader can. What you're gonna do is the first activity is gonna make the network request using the loader. If you rotate the device, then it's gonna go, again, your activity when it's created is gonna go to the loader, and it's not gonna launch a second network request because it knows that there's a network request already going on. And when that network request receives the result, it's able to handle that result to the second activity. So this way, you only have one network request, independently on how many times you rotate the device in the meantime of that network request coming back to you. And that is much more efficient because take into account that every network request that you make is data consumption for the user. And maybe you are used to have like a lot of gigabytes available for you of data, but not everyone does. And even if you have a lot of data connection available, that's battery consumption because offshore that doesn't run for free, and that has a massive impact on your applications. So that's why the loader is an improvement on the asyntax, and that's why you should use it. Okay, so let's can come back to Slack to see. Um, okay, so Michael Gostkek has shared a link here. Yeah, there's some explanation on some resource. It's also explained on the classroom and on the projects that you have. Um, okay, so usually asking about some tutorial on retrofit. I would say that I can find something and share with you, but before that, let me clarify something. It's not something that you should use now, particularly because uh, in your project is not allowed. Okay, this is considered core functionality, and at this stage of your learning, we don't allow you to use libraries for something that we consider core functionality. There's those all that is core functionality is something that you need to write the code yourself and find your way. That's part of your learning. Okay. So let's say I can share something that there are ton of things. So and you guys Google a bit like retrofit example or tutorial. It's like they're gonna be like hundreds. So uh, I don't know. Uh, so I can share some things with you, but don't go crazy, please. Remember that this is like completely extra. So this is retrofit, and I mean, this is just a matter of days. I have not reviewed these tutorials in detail, but they look good. The sources sources that I know that usually have good quality, but there are many more. There are many more that you can have a look at them. So then, but it's important. Please don't use this. Uh, and okay, so give me 1 second. One second, I'm just trying to one of my colleagues the other streaming. Mm. So yeah, I'm coming back. Okay, so okay, so the question is in which context should we use an async task? So honestly, honestly, probably there's no context for that. Async task is like an old way to do things, but it is how it always has been explained initially, and it's part of the course because also is. I mean, if we make you jump, you are in an 100 basics course, which we expect the students are people who have little experience coding or even know nothing. Some of you have never written a line of code before starting the course. So if we put you to use like advanced tools like retrofit or something like that straight away, then it would mind blowing, right? So um, the thing with Async is I think it's also good for the learning because, for example, you get to understand all these things on why not to use an async task, why the loader is better, what are the drawbacks, how the network wall works, how the rotation, how the activity comes. So all these details that I have explained is something that I find that some people who are like even senior Android developers don't know because they have never written an async task. And well, I don't know. It's like you get a solid understanding on the basics. That is this good. So that's why now in this project we are showing you how to use loader and just trying to build on top of what you have learned before, which I think it makes sense. So let's see. Yes, so Jason was asking about the memory leak. Let me read a bit more on this. Yeah. Okay. So let's gonna explain about the memory leaks. Okay. So what's a memory leak? That's a good question. Okay? So let me say start with some Java basics on the Java virtual machine on memory and everything. Okay, so what happens is that you have your application running. It's your Java code. Okay, whatever. It doesn't need to be a Java application, an Android application. It's just how Java works by itself. Okay. So you create a variable, then you create an object, you assign that object to the variable. So essentially, you should know by now that what you're doing is that you creating that object in some point of memory, and you are saying the variable to the variable. But you should point to this point of memory where this information is, right? So you have a memory. You can imagine this like a I don't know box or I don't know whatever you want to imagine how it is. And obviously, you allocate those objects, and those objects take a space. Okay, so then you have a few things like the program and the heap and things that you may have heard about. I'm not an expert on any of those things, to be honest, but anyway, that's the general idea is that you create objects and you put them in summary memory. Okay, and you can access some of them because you know where they are. Okay, so there's a point in which you have an object that you don't need anymore. Okay, so and you should remove that from memory because otherwise you will run out of memory. That's a very, I would say, easy to understand, right? You create objects and more and more and more. You cannot do that forever. There's a limit essentially. So in other programming languages, you need to track and say, okay, so I need to remove this object from memory and because I'm not using anymore on this. So Java has something that is nice. It's a good thing, which is the garbage collector. Okay, it's usually uh, uh, shortened to GC. Okay, so the garbage collector runs here and there. It has its own. You cannot control how it works, but what it does is that it identifies which objects are not used anymore and then it removes from the memory. And the way that the way that it does to identify when an object is not used anymore is that if you have an object and there's something that is pointing to that object, then it's fair to think that that object is being used. But if there's nothing, if there's no variable or anything that or any object that has a reference to that one, then it means that it cannot be reached by your code in any way. And if it cannot be reached by your code in any way, then it's not used, and it can be removed from memory. That the space in memory can be free for the next objects that you will create. And that is a process that runs automatically by the Java virtual machine for you. Okay. Now, the memory leak essentially is a process in which you keep a reference to an object that should not be there. What happens is that when the garbage collector analyzes the objects, it finds that that object is referenced in some other place, and then it's not a candidate to be removed from the memory. It cannot be garbage collected. Okay, the garbage collector will leave it there because, well, there's something pointing to it. And as I said, the problem comes when you leave one of those references for some reason there, and it shouldn't be there. Then what happens is that that bit of memory cannot be removed from memory. And it can be temporal or it can be permanent. So potentially, that bit of memory can be there forever. Okay? So if you have whatever number of megabytes or whatever you want to say, space in memory for the application to run, then now you have less because there's some of that you you have like occupied by something that you are not using, that you cannot free. Potentially, you cannot free. I mean, as I said, it can be like more like a temporal situation, or it can be more permanent. Then your app maybe needs to get some more memory from the system, and let's say that imagine that happened every time that you rotate the device. So then it's like that bit of memory that you are wasting, in a sense, you can have it not only once, but you have whatever number of times that you have rotated the device, or whatever number of times that code, that process runs. And well, you can guess, or you can imagine that this is a big problem, because if you run out of memory, then you can ask for more memory to the system, but there is a limit, and all applications also need memory as well. So that's something that you need to avoid as much as possible. Now, why in this situation you can have a memory leak? So the situation is that you have the async task that is running, and the async task has a reference to the activity. And the activity is destroyed. So if the activity is destroyed, it should be garbage collected, and it should be removed from the memory. But it cannot be removed from memory because the async task is waiting for the network request to come, and is pointing to or has a reference to the activity because it has to handle that result to the activity. Okay, and the garbage collector finds that the activity is referenced from the async task. It will not remove it from the memory. Okay, this is one of the different cases that you can. There are other scenarios where you can have memory leaks, but in essence, that's the idea, that the garbage collector cannot clear something because a reference that should not be there is there. Okay, and it's part of our job as developers that we handle that. So I know that I found recently. I can share some source. Yeah, this one is good. So I'm gonna share with you in Slack like a nice, interesting article about this. It gives a good explanation. And I believe that it adds some other scenarios um, apart from the one that I have explained. That is kind of the easiest to understand. Okay, so I hope that you found that interesting. Please give me some feedback um, on all this on Slack, please. Let me know how you feel about that. There are also, I'm guessing that this in the video that Margot Scott has shared. There's also some explanation of on some tools that we have to identify a bit the memory leaks and at least know when they are happening to improve our code. So that worth having a look at it. But in the probably in the article that I shared, they explain as well, if I remember properly. Okay, so thing that is those all these kind of things that when you go to an interview, they ask you something, you you're able to explain all these things, being a junior developer, not trying to get your first job. I mean, you really show that you understand what you're doing and you have gone in a bit more depth. Uh, Particularly if let's imagine that someone asks you in an interview, so how will you do this? And you say, I will do that. And why wouldn't you use an async task for that instead? And then you say, well, these are all these reasons, and you can elaborate and give like a super big explanation and connect all that with the memory leaks and everything, and then say, well, this guy seems to be a good candidate, of course. So that's a bit of the idea as well. Okay, so I'm gonna take a break. Uh, the break was supposed to be at half past, but it's like 4 minutes left. So we'll take a break for until quarter to 12, sorry, quarter to 1. Sorry, yeah, quarter to 1, right? It's 12:30 now, CET. So I will see you in a bit. So that gives you also some time to progress, and maybe that helps you to come up with more questions. If you have any question, you don't need to wait for me to come. You can drop it in there in the Slack, and then when I come back, I will pick it straight away. Okay. So see you in a bit, and keep on working hard on your projects. Yes. mm, on the docs from Hackathon, and was saying that, well, it's like when to use as in task, short or interruptible task, tasks that don't need to report back to the UI or user, low priority tasks that can be left unfinished. Yeah, you may have some situations, but it's most of the times you're not gonna use as in tasks. It's only here and there, very few places. It's more probable that you're gonna find some asyntax in some code that you're working on. And so if a company hires you and they have an app or various apps, and then you have to do something, um, then you have some asyntax rather than having to write some. Um, I've been using some room and things and architecture components. And yeah, it's feasible to use an asyntax there because it's not so it's probably compliant to those things that they say in the docs. But still, you have some of the options that are probably better. Like I prefer not to give examples because that's going to be a complication. But you will find out in the future. So okay, so let's see. Okay, so I'm waiting for some questions. Okay, so I have something here. Adrian. Okay, so Adrian, who is Adrian Dash, is asking something. Let me see. Okay, so I have big trouble figuring out why my app is not working. Okay, so we'll have to check the repo. Okay, so we have to probably, but can you be more specific, Adrian, on what is not working? I mean, just to give me a bit of context, because um, okay, so the JSON parsing works means that you are retrieving um, the data correctly from the API. And what is the thing that is not working? Mm, okay, so the API call is probably not working. Okay, so let me try to clone it. We can do that because it's not busy, so we don't have many questions. So I'm cloning it now, and I have a look at it. Mm, So everyone is saying, I noticed that Reddit API, for example, returns something else in Chrome that it does in Android, fewer results. So maybe it's something similar there. Here, I really don't know why it would return something different, assuming that it's the same network call. Um, I don't think that's related with that, but let's see. Building your project now, having a look. So it's building. We'll have a look at it. I'm gonna run that on the emulator now and see what happens. Um, okay, so you have a test JSON. Let's see. Hmm. Yeah, but in this version that you have shared, you are using the test JSON. You are not using the loader, right? Adrian? Yeah, so you have a commit that mm, which commit should I look at? Because this one is not is using the test JSON. Can you Adrian? It's gonna be this. Save the ID. Okay, so we'll debug this a bit. Um, There's also an example using a random main for those, so I assume I should wrap the log messages in something like that. I don't get what you mean with this. You probably should be okay if you have your log messages in your uh, load finish on create loader and on these methods that you implement. So let me see which um, which commit is this other one that you have just mentioned. Let me check out that branch about that. We get to that commit. Yeah, I'm trying that one now. So give me a second. That. So, to the back. Let's see what I can say here. Mm, it's interesting. It doesn't seem to get to the word finish. Or URL seems to be built properly. It's definitely there's an issue with it. Yeah, you're starting the loader gets in it, but let's say there might be a problem in the loader. Okay, your loading background is not called. I'm not sure why. Okay. Let me see if I have some more messages. Yes, so for some reason your loading background is not called. So try something very quickly. Let me try to see if I can get an example. See what we are missing. Sorry, I was replying to one of my colleagues, so they're streaming for some more thing. So let's see if we have any more comment here. So, okay, I think I'm gonna take 5 minutes or something to go for that. More like quiet. So I'm gonna disconnect the camera and everything because it's a bit silly to be here like this. Okay, so I will come back to you shortly. Okay, so I'm back on the streaming. I've managed to find out the problem. Let's see, where is my screen here? Okay, Adrian, are you listening to me? Just to double check before I explain. Adrian? Say. Okay, so let me share my screen. I'm gonna show you where the problem is. It's a minor thing, and your app seems to be running well. Apart from that, so I'm gonna share my screen very quickly. Okay, so as you can see in the emulator, this the uh, it's fetching properly. So the only thing is that, as I said, the loading background was not being called. So obviously there's no network request. Well, it's not going to do it because you didn't have the network request here. So it's a super minor thing. It's just you need to add this force load here. So this is what I have highlighted is the bit that you are missing. So if you add this force load, that will force the loading background to run, and your network code will be effectively done, and the rest seems okay. You probably need to tweak here the UI, but your data seems fine. Hope that it helps. Please let me know if everything makes sense to you now. Was this? I really don't know. I'm not sure, but I remember I have found this on the past before. So I don't know, honestly. It's not in the documentation, I believe. Uh, but yeah, I remember from last year when we had the scholarships, we did that, something similar as well. So I'm gonna share with you something nice that I have. But I need to figure out the link. So probably it might take a bit of time to find out. Okay, so in the meantime, are there any more questions? So I'm gonna try to find this resource. Oh, it's a video that I made last year. So, so I'm afraid I don't have access to this now. I thought this was a video I thought was in my channel, but it's not in my channel. I will have to look for it, but I'm afraid it's going to be difficult to display and to find, unfortunately. So there was like a bit of demo on the loaders real time, but I can't find it now. Okay, so it seemed like Oya was typing. Okay, waiting for Oya to reply. Then I went something on the side. So let's see, seems like something new. Mm. Oh, well, I haven't looked at that detail. So so Oya is asking if we can use the OK HTTP because she found that Adrian was using. Uh, I don't think it's allowed to use that for. You shouldn't be using libraries for core functionality. So obviously, I was not looking at that detail in the code that Adrian had. But I think that Oya has pointed out something that it can be a problem. You shouldn't be using libraries for core functionality in this stage. So Adrian, I'm afraid that you will have to change that bit. But well, obviously the question was regarding the loaders, and it's what I was focused on. I didn't get a look on how the actual call is done. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so we have 40 minutes left. So if you don't have anything, you don't have any question, there's maybe nothing specific that I can share. I might end the streaming earlier. No offense, but if I'm gonna be here in front of the camera doing nothing, I would prefer to go to some of the streaming and help some of the students. But so Firearm is we talk about loader or loader manager, but it's like what exactly you want to know. I mean, I'm not super expert on the loader manager. I mean, it's like I use it as I have used it not many times just for learning purposes. But is anything specific that you want to ask about that? Because I really don't know what. How can I get so? Francisco is typing. So let's see some more messages. Yeah, so Fragagon is saying it doesn't have any idea in particular on what displaying is like. I don't have an idea either. I have explained a few things that I knew were relevant, and I proposed when you didn't have questions. There's not much about loaders. I mean, you know now. I think after the explanation before, you have a clear understanding of why you use loader and what's the advantage that the loader can then give um, that result to the right activity when it rotates, and the kind of problems that you have with an async task that the loader solves. So that's basically that. Then obviously you need to go through the process of implementing it. But if there's no any like a particular doubt, like for example, everyone had his implementation and would say, okay, why is not working, and then you can find out like, okay, so and you're missing this bit here. Uh, that's okay. But if you don't have like anything specific, that's going to be a bit difficult to give more explanation. Okay, so waiting for Oya to finish typing. Okay, so we have a bit more time. Okay, it seems like Oya is typing a lot. Okay, so let me see. Okay, so the question is, I'm checking some news app for inspiration, and in some of them, a newly arrived article is automatically shown at the top of the list, sometimes in a different color for a while. How do they do these things? Should I need to restart the loader regularly? Well, this is a bit tricky because you don't know if there's going to be a new article. So the question is, when, assuming that you have to make a second network request, okay, so you have your articles and you make another network request to get the new ones. The first question that rises is, when do you do that? Do you do that every minute, every 10 minutes, every hour? How do you decide? Okay, so if you do too often, you're probably wasting battery. And let's say if you request it 10 times and only one of them has been something new, you have requested like 9 times that this is a waste of battery. Again, as we were speaking before, you're making more network requests than you need, and that's a problem because you're wasting battery and you're wasting data consumption, and that's not a good idea. Okay, so now the thing is, how you do this? Probably you can have some setting, maybe the the user has a setting say, okay, check automatically for new things every 3 hours, for example. That's an option. Another option is that the server tells you when there's something new. So the server sends you a push notification. Doesn't mean that you need to show an actual notification on the device necessarily, but you can take an action due to that notification. So essentially, the server is sending you a notification that, hey, for you to know, when you receive this notification, there's something new here. and then the device, the app can make that network request and get the new things. I really don't know how to do. Those are the options that come to my head. I want to say you need to worry about. From my perspective, in the app that you are doing, is good enough to have a pull to request. So let me see if I can find. Let me see. So, so this that I'm gonna share with you should probably be enough. It's my window. Need to close a few tabs here. So here's some of these resources. Same, okay. Yeah, so that seems like a reasonable approach. Like, so the user pulls from the top, and when that happens, he's actively asking you to make the network request, rather than being making network requests in a crazy way. I don't say that the apps that you've seen do that, because they probably have implemented some other solution, as I probably as I just suggested, from with the push notification could be an option, or maybe they have some setting that say every whatever number of hours. Okay, now how you make um, the color different that you were saying. Says the article is automatically shown on the top. That makes sense because it's newer. Okay, so if they are ordered chronologically, it should be on the top. Then sometimes in a different color for a while. Is that what you say? So how do you do that? When the idea will be something like to change the color. It's easy to make a different color background. So we will say, okay, so if the element in this position, when the adapter handles all this information to paint every row, the adapter has this on bind view method, and it's where you put everything in place for that particular row. So what you can do is check the date of that row. So if you probably have a date somewhere, so you say this article is older than or is newer than whatever number of milliseconds, time or days or whatever you want to do. Then set the background to this other color for this particular line, and there you have a color. And that's it. And you have it for a particular time, because then as time goes by, that condition will not be met again. That's thing like a good approach. Okay, so let me. Oh yeah, if that helps. So Valerie Popov is asking. I have a question about the API. How far is it means by line? Valerie, Valerie, please explain better? I don't fully understand what you mean. You see, I said I may go, and you're starting to have questions. Huh? Okay, so Valerie, are you listening to me? Can you please explain better what you mean? I don't fully get what you're trying to ask. Okay, so Valerie, and So waiting for Valery to see if he can give us some clue on what he means on his question. Let's give some more time. Maybe I can mention him. To understand Valery's question. So in the meantime, does anyone have another question? Valery? So I check in. I don't remember where do you get the author name. I don't see that coming back on the JSON. So Ryan is asking for the live streaming link. It's in the topic above. So where do you guys get the author name? Because it's not coming in the. Is anything wrong with my JSON with the one I get from the test? It's confusing. Okay, so it seems that Valery has figured out uh, about his questions. Yeah, but the rubric says here, I have the rubric in front of me. Okay, it says if available. If available, the author name and date published. So, okay, so maybe that's the problem. So just in my JSON, there's none of the articles that come in the response have an author. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen so you can see how I click the one buttons. You can see the discussion on the here. So So if you don't have more questions, I will probably end the streaming here. Okay, so just waiting a bit. Paragon is typing. Let's see. Wow. Okay, so it seems that there's no more questions. So I'm going to, I would like to stay and answer more of your questions, but I think that the most reasonable thing is to stop the streaming here. We have like 20 minutes left, but I can maybe jump into another streaming, which is easier, and see if some of the uh, coaches have need some of my help. So it's been a pleasure to be here. Thanks for joining. I hope that it has been beneficial for you, and maybe you can submit something before the end of the day or tomorrow. Um, P6, P7. Well, it seems like you're almost there. If you finish these projects, uh, you are in the by the end of the process, very close to graduation. So I think that you can be quite positive. So Oya is typing. I'm just gonna wait to see what she says. Good. So Jason is typing as well. Okay, so enjoy the rest of your day. Keep on coding and having fun. And I think that we will be shortly celebrating some graduation. So when you finish your projects, when you graduate, please remember to drop me a line, okay? I will be more than happy every time that any of you graduates. It's a great day, okay? So take care and see you soon.